So what I wanted to do is I wanted just to talk about a couple of things that are key for me related to an event that I attended recently. And anyone, if you're watching this, you might see coming up on the screen, you might think, what the hell is that? And it's a tennis ball mug. And I'm going to do a podcast actually, coming up to my 50th birthday around bucket list things that I think that are on my list. And I want to hear back what's on your list, really. But I wanted just to the reason I mentioned this is Wimbledon has just finished here in the UK. And if you're listening overseas, obviously one of the world's greatest and oldest tennis tournament. And it just finished a few weeks ago, I should say. And I wanted just to do a podcast to talk about what we can learn and what I learned from both what Wimbledon do, but also what the players at Wimbledon showed. And I want to just do a podcast just to talk a bit about some of the things that I think Wimbledon can teach us. It was my first time. The reason I mentioned the bucket list stuff, it was on my list to go to Wimbledon. And my wife has been wanting to go to much more than I. Tennis is a game it's okay. I don't mind playing it a little bit here and there, but it's never been a big thing for me. But I wanted to experience it. It was on my bucket list to go and do. And I basically had the opportunity, very kindly due to a great contact of mine, go to Wimbledon and have some hospitality at Wimbledon on the centre court. And I was given the opportunity and I was like, okay, wow, let's go and do this. But there are a few things that I think that I learned from Wimbledon that just tell me about some good things around sales. And I always like to try and look at the experiences and the things that I do day to day and how do they link back to sales and what I try and help and support people with and teach over the course of the work that I do. And there are a few things that maybe made me think about sort of what Wimbledon do that I thought, well, I'll bring to the occasion. Well, so the first thing is this, and if you're watching this again, it's like I say, this is a tennis ball mug. I got it from Wimbledon. I thought I've got to go to Wimbledon and have something that I may not go back. And the first thing I'd say that they do really, really well is they market themselves really well. So Wimbledon, we went into the shop at Wimbledon. And it was literally, they were queuing to go into this shop, and they basically have most things in there that you can relate and think about related to tennis, and whether it's clothing, whether it's stuff for your kitchen, whether it's stuff for your bathroom, stuff for any room in your house, they pretty much had it there with a Wimbledon logo on it. And I was amazed that the amount of people that were walking around with baskets and putting just stuff into the baskets. And it made me think about, a couple of things there that Wimbledon teaches us. And obviously Wimbledon's been going for a long, long time. It's a massive national sport, international sports event. But they market themselves really well. And they market themselves in a really strong way with a clear identity of what Wimbledon's about. Now, if I was to say to you right now, what does Wimbledon mean to you? As even if you don't like tennis, you might think of grass courts. You might think of people all in white. You might think of strawberries and cream. You might think of the royal box. I don't know, but there's a number of things that you might think about when it comes. You might think of champagne. You might think of huge amounts of different things around what it means to you. But there will be a connotation and a brand associated to Wimbledon that generally is pretty positive in most cases. For most people, and certainly across the world, there is this aura about Wimbledon on what they do. So the first thing I think is to be able to market yourselves well. And look, what I say to any person listening to this, or if you're in a business, is your market and your brand and your identity is matters a huge amount. And how do you market yourself? How do you market your name or your company? And if it's not you that's responsible for that, how do you market yourself personally? There was a friend of mine a number of years ago who worked in the financial space. And we did a search on his name. So one of the great things to do is to Google search your name. And if you Google search your name, what comes up? Firstly, are you found? Are you at the bottom of the list? Or are you found at all? But if you've got a unique name, what comes up on that? And he's in the financial space. He works with people that have got lots of money. So, lots of wealth. And one of the first things that came up on him was him drinking a pint. In a T-shirt, and I could tell that he looked at it and went, I'm not sure this is the right impression I want to give if someone's going to give me millions of pounds to invest for them. But that was what it showed for him. So one of the great things to do is search your brand. And if you search for the Wimbledon brand, you'll see, in Wimbledon Tennis Championship, you'll see a picture of centre court, or you'll see a picture of these grass events, it all looking immaculate and beautiful. You don't generally see, a poor brand represented. So my question to you is, it helps you market yourselves well. And people think, oh, I haven't got the money to market myself well, but you do have the ability to market yourself on free channels, whether it's social media, creating websites now is very cheap and effectively. So how do you show up? How do you market yourself and what you say and what you do? And if that is with In a Pint, with you in a pint in looking in a bit of a mess, what does that say about you and who you are? And sometimes you might say, well, I've got a name like David Smith. And if you've got a name like David Smith, you might say, well, actually, I'm not going to be very visible because, there's lots of David Smiths in the world. And it's the same for me. There's lots of James Whites in the world. If I search my name on Google, there is an American national football, an NFL rugby, NFL football player. There's a theologian. There's a guy in the UK that does juices. So I was like, how am I going to link my name and be my brand? So if you search James White, you'll get lots of different people. If you search James White sales on Google, you'll get me showing up, mainly pretty much showing up in the same way consistently. So going back to my Wimbledon point is, again, how do you show up and how do you build your brand? I think is really, really important. So that's the first thing. Try and show up and be consistent in the way in which you look. Do people get a different view of you in one place compared to another? Or is it the same brand that they get on a regular basis? Because that consistency then builds trust, and I had an expectation of what to expect with Wimbledon before I got there. I sort of had this feeling because I'd searched it and looked for it, and I sort of had a feeling of what it would be like, and it turned out to be exactly what it was like. And so they buy consistency. The reason McDonald's is such a popular brand worldwide is not because their burgers are the best. It's because people know what to expect. They build that. Okay, the Big Mac in Birmingham is the same as the Big Mac in Bromley or in Brighton. The reality is it's the same. People buy consistency. So make sure the way you show up and the way your brand shows up is reflective of what you want it to be. I guess my second point is this mug that I've got now in my hand. I can't actually quite believe I did it. It's a mug, right? It's quite a big mug. It's a mug there, but I think that was like £19. And I bought that, and my wife bought an umbrella, and we paid like £48 for these two things. I remember thinking, wow, I remember thinking at the time, at least Dick Turpin wore a mask, as I was sort of robbed the £48 leaving there. And then I thought to myself afterwards, no, they're maximising the margin on their brand. And if you build a brand, and if you build a really strong brand that's well known, well identified, then why shouldn't you? And some people say, oh, it's terrible. They're taking people for a ride. I would argue, good on them. Good on them for being able to maximise the amount of money that they can make. If they can get someone like me who's savvy in sales to spend 18 quid on a mug, and how much does a mug cost to make? I'm guessing, I better not look for where this is made, but I'm guessing it's probably made, in China or whatever. Probably cost 10p to make. But they've sold it for £18, so they've maximised their margin. So if you have got a brand, you've got the ability to maximise what you can do from it, and it makes it, feel special for people, then do that. Now, why, the Lawn Tennis Association will tell you that the money they make from Wimbledon goes into tennis and how it helps tennis and develop, grow, whatever else. There's loads of stories and stuff. I'm sure they can take what they do with their money is up to them. But I know for a fact, from looking at the amount of people that were there on that day, I was only there for one day and this tournament ran for 2 weeks. The amount of money they must have took in that shop over the period of time was breathtaking. But all of that money is helping them, to market the brand that they have, and grow and build and hopefully make a bigger impact and helping people play tennis and all these other good things. So I definitely think it's, make a margin on your brand, understand your value, and then be okay to make a margin on that. And the best way to try that is to put prices up. If they'd have put this price at 50 quid, I would have probably said, no, I'm not buying it. And they've probably done some tests and some work to see what's the price people will pay for different items. And they'll still test that, but keep moving that upwards. And as I say to you all about your pricing, you're better off to go higher than it is to go lower. Keep adjusting that pricing. Keep seeing what reaction and response you get from people, so you can maximise your margin on your brand. I'll be honest with you, if we get a chance to work together, I'm going to maximise the chance I can for my brand. And why do I do that? And I'll tell you this honestly now, so I can make more impact. So for me, if someone wants to work with me, I'm going to charge them what I can. I don't want to overcharge them or rip them off, but I'm going to charge them what I feel is valuable so that I have the opportunity to bring income in so I can make more impact. That's the simple thing for me. I want to help as many hundreds of thousands of people worldwide achieve sales success. And the more money I bring in, the more I can invest in that. But work out what your brand is and make some margin on who you are, and utilize that to achieve what you can, and test your pricing, continue to move that pricing upwards slightly and see what reaction that you get. So the third thing I think about Wimbledon is build a waiting list of people who want to work with you. And this is, again, a number of people talked about, tickets and getting access to tickets. But at Wimbledon, there are people who queue up, and they even camp overnight to try and get access into Wimbledon to watch the tennis. And they've built this audience of people that are desperate to be part of what that brand is about. And what does that do? And some of these people probably do it because they enjoy doing it now. It's their sort of pastime. But what that does is it creates basically a greater demand for your services. I always say to people, if you walk past a restaurant and there's no one in there and there's no queue there, or let's say you want to phone up a plumber and you say, any chance you can come around and help me? Yeah, I've got nothing on this afternoon, I'll come round. What would you think? You'd think, oh, why is a plumber not very busy? Whereas if I phone up my plumber, Ethan, and I say to Ethan, when can you come round? Diary stacked for 2 weeks. How big an emergency is it? And if I say it's a really big emergency, he'll come in after sort of 6 o'clock because I've got a good relationship with him. But normally he'll be like, I've got 3 or 4 weeks in before I can fit you in. So it's same as a restaurant. If you go past that restaurant, you think, oh, no one's there. But if there's a restaurant I went to on Saturday evening that had literally a queue of people waiting outside for the hope that they could get in, and a waiting list for literally 4 months. And if you've got that, people think there's something special and they want to be part of it. So it's that demand and supply element. But be able to create a waiting list, the demand of people that want to work with you is hugely important. And sometimes you can do that without even having to sell something. You can create a waiting list. You can create an evidence, or you can say to people, here's a waiting list. If you're interested in doing this and this with me, click here or submit this information and we'll see if we can build a waiting list. And you can test out whether people are interested in something in order to build that. If you've then got 100 people on that waiting list, but only 10 spaces, the chances are people are going to pay more for that. And that's going to enable you to increase your margin in your brand. So again, the good thing that Wimbledon tells us is that they keep that waiting list there. They keep tickets, and how they sell their tickets. Again, some people might say, oh, the way they do it is bad, but they build that waiting list. They make people want to be there, and that enables them to get lots of people to buy into it, which keeps this aura around Wimbledon and makes people want to turn up. And that helps them sell demand and build demand for their tickets. And if you try and get hold of Wimbledon tickets, they're very difficult to get hold of. So that demand will increase prices and increases the supply. It increases the ability for them to then make an impact with the money they earn from that. A couple of other things that I want to just talk about in terms of the Wimbledon event, and then I'll talk about a couple of things around the players. The first thing is Wimbledon set really good standards and stick to them. And why is that really good in sales and business? Because people know what to expect. So I watched this on a Saturday a couple of months back, and Wimbledon's rules are, whereas if you watch most tennis tournaments, the players turn up in these different garish shirts and colours and whatever else. In Wimbledon, it's all white. And if you don't play in all white, you don't get to play. Whether you're the best player in the world or the worst player in the world, or the lowest ranked player in the world, you don't get to play. And someone said, oh, it's bad, it's terrible, they should, relax the standards. But it's their rules. And, they've set some standards on how they want the game to be played, and people have to abide by them. And if you don't set those good standards and stick to them, things are going to fall awry. And I actually think standards are a really important thing, especially in sales and business, to create. And what are the standards that you have for yourself and the way you want to operate? And the moment you start to let those standards slip, things start to go wrong. There's a great saying I know have and share with people, which is what you will allow will become. So in other words, if you don't want standards to slip, don't basically drop those things initially. And the moment you start dropping, going, oh, it'll be okay this time. The moment that Wimbledon enabled one player to go on the court in a red shirt and go, oh, it'll be okay, suddenly they're going to get everyone then doing the same thing. And they don't. Every time, every Wimbledon player comes out in white because that's the standards that they set. So I think having good standards and sticking to them is really, really key. And then going back to the other point linked to that is they celebrate good behaviour. If you go to Wimbledon, what I did, it was this archetypical, very British sort of way of operating. Everyone was very polite and very welcoming and very, all doing the right thing. But when people go outside of those standards, people call them out. So I was, watching the game on centre court, and there was a couple of times where people were, shouting out, and there was someone that popped the champagne cork and it went onto the court. And other people, and normally it's reliant on the sort of the officials or the people in the stadium or the people that run the stadium to call it out. But actually, it was the other people in the stadium that called it out and said, no, that's not acceptable. Don't do that. And no. And the standards that I've just talked about were maintained by those that had come along, and they called out other people as a result of it. And I think that's a really powerful thing when you've got, good behavior. So, for example, when someone did something well, or a good sportsmanship gesture, or a good gesture, people clapped and celebrated. And when something did something that wasn't right, they called them out. And I think if you can, again, get your, the people in your team and your company, your people that work with you, to know and to understand and hold you to account for the standards that you've talked about, then I think it's going to be much better, and you're going to get better results. And you're going to build a tribe of people that, again, you can get your customers to recommend you rather than you having to go and find new customers. That's going to be a massive factor towards helping you grow your business. And that happens where you set the standards and then maintain them, and other people then want to work towards, your approach. So I guess a couple of other things that I want to just talk about in relation to Wimbledon before I finish this podcast, because I know Wimbledon's gone now, but I was amazed by the speed by which the game operated by. And I guess the thing for me, when I look at the athletes, and we watched Novak Djokovic on the court, and I'll come to him in a moment, but the Sinner and a couple of the other people that were on the court, the speed and the athleticism in which they performed their craft, to me, just reinforced how the very best sports people work incredibly hard and commit their life to their craft. And why is that important for us? Well, it's important for us in sales, because if we want to be the best we can be, we have to commit ourselves to our craft. And if we don't commit ourselves to our craft, don't be surprised when our craft doesn't get us where we want to, or the results we want to. And so for me, I was just blown away by the athleticism and speed of which the players, there was a lady, we went to watch a ladies double match while we were there, and there was a lady, I can't remember her name now. She's based in Swansea, a young British lady, and she's based from Swansea, which is where I'm from. And the athleticism and speed in which these athletes, these ladies and men, run around the court, I thought was incredible. And it just showed me that to be at the top of your game, you have to commit and put time and effort into doing what you do. And that's the same for us in sales and business. We want to be the best. It doesn't happen just by accident. It's very rarely you're going to get someone in Wimbledon who just played the odd bit of tennis and then turned up and wanted to play. You got to be the best, and that's got to be commitment over a period of time. So just commit to your craft, commit to developing. And that leads me on to my final point around, so Novak Djokovic was there, and he was, the greatest ever tennis player in terms of the amount of Grand Slams that he's ever won. And what was interesting is in the crowd was Novak Djokovic's coach. And I remember thinking to myself, here's a guy that's won like 19, I think it is, Grand Slam major titles. He's won more than anyone else in the world, and yet he still has a coach and a team of people that are there to push him along. And it made me think, well, actually, when was the last time, and maybe something to ask yourself, when was the last time you were coached or supported or mentored or had the ability to keep learning from other people in and around your industry and your world? And I think learning from other people is so important. He's learning. Tiger Woods is one of the greatest golfers ever. Scotty Scheffler, I talked about it from the Open Golf that happened a couple of weeks after that, has a putting coach that helps him become the better at what he does. So to me, if you want to be one of the best, you've got to continually focus on learning and developing. So my question to you is, how are you learning? What's the one thing you've learned? Hopefully you're learning some from the podcast, but what other courses or activities, how you've invested in yourself to learn? Are you investing like Djokovic is in a coach to help him become better? Are you doing the same in your world? And that's not a pitch for me to coach you. If you want me to, happy to, but it's about how you invest in yourself to make sure you develop your skills, and so that you can add that to the work ethic, like I've just talked about, to become the best at what you do. So look, some really lots of good things that there's loads of other things that Wimbledon teaches us. I'm sure, just as I say, the whole approach and the whole thing they do is, there was one other thing that I did actually, what I thought was really intriguing. So from the whole experience, and that's that we did hospitality there, and the hospitality was done outside of the ground at a house, just literally about 2 minutes walk from the stadium. And the other thing I take this final lesson as a thing about Wimbledon is being opportunistic and being able to seize an opportunity. And basically, the family that live at this house don't like tennis. And so they don't like tennis. So therefore, when you're in around Wimbledon, when you live that close, and it's a beautiful house. It's a beautiful house in Wimbledon. It can be hard work, I imagine, with traffic and everything else there. So what this family do is they see an opportunity to rent their house out for a 2 to 3 week period. And the guy that was in the organisation that I was there with just said the owners go off to Barbados for that period of time and just relax, knowing that they've had a holiday paid for by someone else and their house is rented out. I thought, yeah, what a clever opportunity to be in a position where you've got like a really expensive holiday paid for by someone else because they're using a house for something that people will value. And sometimes we have to be able to look and see where what we have, and is there a skill? Is there something you've got that you value that can be used for that? Maybe you live near a stadium, maybe you live near an environment. I always say to people, I think the sharing economies that are growing. There's some great things I hear about all the time. About people that park on the drive and you get paid to park someone on your drive, or you can Airbnb for your house or whatever else. So this whole idea of being able to utilize and see opportunities, I think, is really great. And that's another thing maybe that Wimbledon teaches us is what are the things that you can potentially sell or market out to the marketplace that can benefit you. So look, lots of great things that Wimbledon taught us and teaches us, but I was just I think this is just something that's just an incredible thing. And for me, it taught me lots of good things. It was a great opportunity to go. As I say, I'm going to do a podcast on bucket list things to do, because I'd love to hear some of your bucket list things that you want to do and see and do. But just for me, that seeing that Wimbledon was on that list and I managed to do it, and there's some good things that it taught me that I think can maybe help you in the work that you do, in the sales work you provide. I'd love to know your thoughts. Have you been to Wimbledon? What do you think? Either put it in the comments section below or reach out to me on social media. Connect with me at any social media at James White Sales and let me know what you thought. But look, as I always do, I try and finish the podcast on an inspirational story, and I wanted to do this story today about a young man. I think he's in Pakistan. It might be in Bangladesh. I'm not quite sure, but I think it's in. And he's a young lad called Baba Ali. And Baba, at 9 years old, he was keen on learning. This sort of ties well into sort of the elements we just talked about, learning and becoming better. He wanted to learn and was keen on learning, but he also had some number of children nearby him that couldn't afford to go to school. And at 9 years old, Baba started teaching kids that couldn't afford to go to school. And at 16 years old, he was recognised as the world's youngest headmaster, and he runs a school. As I say, it might be Pakistan or Bangladesh. I can't remember which one it is. But the point being for me was that even at 9 years old, he was still focused on inspiring and changing hundreds of lives. And I think when you get kids at that age, 9 years old, who decide he wants to help others, just an incredible example of how we can achieve what we want to, and an inspirational story to realise that whatever we think and whatever our age, if we want to make a difference in people's world, then we can. So look, that's it from me. Great story with Baba, which I think is incredible. That's the story for this week. Hope you've enjoyed the podcast. What are the things that, what's the event that you've been to that you've learned from? I've shared my stories around Wimbledon that was important for me, and some things that I've learned from it. But I'm interested to know your thoughts on what the things that you've attended or been to recently that have helped shape your thinking process. But that's it for this week, as ever, on the podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I do really appreciate it. I read and watch any or listen to any comment people send me through. So please do send in comments through if you want to reach out to me on any social channel, James White Sales. I love reading your messages of how it's helping you. So please continue to share those. But until next week, I'll leave you to have a safe and happy week. Keep smiling, keep remembering the good things and smiling, and also dealing with the bad things as well. Life's full of ups and downs. It's the journey that matters. So keep having a great week, and I'll see you next Wednesday. Take care. Bye.